So today we're going to talk about cultivating relationships. And I love this particular term for what's happening with donors because of the gardening kind of metaphor that it connotes. We're really trying to take the time and attention to grow a beautiful relationship and see it come to fruition and blossom, just the way that we would with a garden. So we're going to talk about some practical tips for cultivation today and some strategies to make sure that your cultivation is as impactful as it can be. Cultivation, of course, appears along the resource development cycle right after you identify and qualify a donor. Once you've decided that you're interested in talking to someone as a potential donor, and you've qualified that yes, they are someone who would be interested in donating to you, it's time for the steps that are in red and orange there, discovery and cultivation. And these two are really closely linked because as you are cultivating, building a relationship with the donor, you also are engaged in the process of discovery, where you're trying to determine those factors about your donor which will influence the amount and the kind of gift, the decision maker, the reasons for giving, their areas of interest, and so forth. What happens too often in resource development is we go from identify to ask, skipping over the 3 steps that come in between. And that's when we can either end up harming a relationship with the donor, receiving less of a gift than would have been possible, or receiving a one-and-done kind of gift that's really being done in a very transactional fashion. So cultivation and discovery are not quick, but cultivation and discovery are essential if you want to be able to get the kinds of gifts that you need to create great change at your club. So let's take a second to talk about the difference between cultivation and stewardship. Even as you are stewarding for the last gift, you are probably cultivating for the next gift. The primary difference is that stewarding really refers to maintaining good relationships with people who have already made a gift. And cultivation refers to building a relationship and educating them about a gift to the organization or a future gift to the organization. So in cultivation, you're really trying to move your donor ever closer to making a gift. And the best way to do that is to help them to understand that you're trustworthy, that your organization does great things for kids, and that you have the ability to make a love connection between what the donor wants to accomplish with their giving and what you are able to accomplish for kids. A couple of important points about cultivation that I hope you will remember. First, cultivation is strategic, systematic, and coordinated. So when someone says, yeah, no, I've been working with that donor, I saw him at the grocery store the other day and we talked, that's not really strategic, systematic, and coordinated. That's incidental. Or when we say, well, we identified that person and so now we're going to go out and ask him for a gift, that's not strategic, systematic, and coordinated. That's just sort of going out and asking for a gift. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in this webinar and that you'll have resources for is a tool that helps you to plan your cultivation so that even though relationships develop somewhat organically with people, we have strategic touch points so we know how we're building the relationship and what the next step is even as we're in the last step. That keeps us ever closer to the important end game, which is that cultivation ultimately needs to lead to an ask. So when we come out of a meeting and we say it was all nice and good and everyone was happy and everyone had a good time, that's great. But our outcome that we want isn't for everyone to have a really nice and good time. It's to move our donor prospect closer to an ask. And we do that by starting to explore what they're interested in. We do that by talking about what could be possible in the future. We do that by getting their feedback on programs and getting their ideas for new programs. But we're starting to position them in such a way that eventually they will be asked for a gift and that they're expecting to be asked for a gift. So a few great cultivation tools include face-to-face visits. It's really hard to cultivate a donor and build a true relationship through email and letters, through phone calls. You need to get face-to-face with your donor so that you can get to know them. And lots of people in the organization need to be face-to-face with the donor, not just the development person, not just the exec, but board members, volunteers, club kids, absolutely. A club tour. Now, hopefully there's nobody on this webinar who's surprised when I say club tour is the best cultivation tool that you have. Because every time a donor does a tour, they say, oh, I didn't know you did all this. This is amazing. And they start asking questions and learning about the unique and special programs that your club has and how those are grounded in support from BGCA. They get to meet the kids, they get to meet the staff, and that's where that real spark ignites. Now, getting the donor to come in for the club tour can be a challenge. Your board members can be tremendously helpful here because they can tell that person, hey, I'm going to be at the club at XYZ and I'd love to show you around. The club tour, more than anything else, is our secret weapon. No other nonprofit has a mission as important or urgent as ours. No other nonprofit has the tool of that tour that we have. It's just the best for our donors. Certainly asking your donor for their advice and feedback through donor surveys, through talking to your donor face-to-face, bringing them onto advisory committees when you're considering new initiatives. These are great ways to help get that donor bought in, because then no longer is it your program, it's their program too. So if I've been talking to a donor along and along about, I'd like to start a meals program, and we're kind of considering, this kind of a kitchen or this kind of a program, and they're bought in too, they're giving you advice, they know how much it costs, they know what the outcomes are going to be, and they start to imagine themselves as part of that program. So you know the old saying, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. So ask for advice. Involving your donor in fun and impactful activities with the kids. So this could be judging a talent show. It could be coming and speaking to a group of smart girls about their career choice. It could be coming in the afternoon and reading a book to the kids, something that's impactful for the children, that helps the donor to see the kinds of things that are happening at the club and involves them in a way that's comfortable for them. It needs to be specific. When we say things like come by anytime, it's likely they won't come by because that's a little too intimidating. But when we say, could you hand out the bread at our Thanksgiving dinner, that's something the donor can easily relate to, and it's fun for them as well. Arranging a day of caring project for your donor and his or her friends. Small gatherings at a board member or donor's home. We'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. These would be designed just for cultivation, not for an ask. Breakfast, of course, with the president, with the board, anyone. Calling them on an important day, their birthday, Valentine's Day, Halloween, whatever it is. And personalized notes. I like notes that send along pieces of news that are important that you can kind of relate to your club. So, for example, if the studies just come out about the levels of childhood obesity in your community, you might send that along with a note explaining what you're doing to keep your kids fit. Speaking of great cultivation tools, there's a resource that I want to be sure everybody knows about. It's called the Party with a Purpose. And everything you need for Party with a Purpose is on bgca.net on the funding page. So if you go to bgca.net, you go to funding, and you click on Club RD, then what you will find are lots and lots of different tools to help you in resource development. In this case, you would then go down to cultivation, and you would find all of the tools for the Party with a Purpose. The Party with a Purpose is held at a board member or a donor's home and is designed for people to just come, learn a little bit about your club and what you do, and have a great experience getting introduced to the club. You can then follow up with them to answer questions that they were curious about, to provide them with the tour and those kinds of things. So this is a great resource. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to contact me about it. While you cultivate, be sure that you are doing discovery. And we've talked about that. You want to ask and then listen. Ask purposeful and probing questions. What are they familiar with about the organization? What do they believe are the perceptions of the organization? What's lacking in our community for kids? Learn about their own childhood, because some of those things can be extremely important in starting to understand what makes the donor tick and what really gets their heart afire when it comes to philanthropic giving. Here's the step that I think we forget. Document all of your contact. A summary of everything important that happens in that call with the donor is really going to be essential, because when you win the lottery and you become a donor instead of an exec or an RD staff member, you're going to want to be sure someone else knows how to get a hold of that donor, what to talk to that donor about, and what's already been covered. The last thing that you want is for a donor to say, don't you guys talk to each other? I've shared this story with you 5 times. And as we have staff get promoted, win the lottery, etc., that can happen. The other thing is this can prevent mistakes, like I go and talk to a donor about a gift and later a board member goes and talks to a donor about a gift. And although we like our memory to be infallible, it's not. And so sometimes if you've had lots of good activity, lots of face-to-face visits, you may find yourself saying, oh, who was it that told me they think kids need more exposure to the arts? Who was that? I wish I could remember, because now I could ask them for a gift. So what you want to do is fill out what's called a contact report. And I have a template that's attached here as one of your downloads after the webinar. And this is just going to document what happened in a meeting with your donor prospect. So after face-to-face meetings, after significant communication, when you present or get response to a proposal, when you learn any new information, when you determine your next steps, or when the action results in a move, that is, someone starts to move from one stage to another, for example, discovery to cultivation, cultivation to asking, so that you're able to keep track of what's the trajectory really been for this donor. This is an example of what a contact report looks like. And I really can't emphasize enough how critically important this is. Because if you have all of the details saved of what you've talked about, of who's going to be doing what, of what the strategy is, then you make sure that your communication with your donor is intentional and strategic, and you're able to move them along toward making that gift. This way you can say, oh my gosh, we haven't seen this person in 3 months. Or the last time we spoke to them, they shared that they were really interested in learning more about our kids' graduation rate and how to help improve it in our community. You're tracking all of those sorts of things. Now, it's unreasonable to think that your board members, and in many cases a very busy exec, can fill out extensive contact reports. So you can put something into place where you say, hey, just let me know when you talk to somebody, what they said, and what the next step should be, and I'll put it into that contact report. If you're using your database, it already has a place where you can save your donor contact reports. So just be sure to use it, because if you lose this data, I mean, it's just as bad as losing gift data, not knowing who's done what when. So if you're recording what you're doing and you're trying to be intentional, one thing you want to be sure to have is a cultivation plan. And I have something attached here that you can use as a cultivation plan, but really it's just a simple spreadsheet where you say, these are our prospects, this is the stage that they're in, this is the next step, this is the ultimate goal, this is what we hope to ask them for. If you're just starting out, have a cultivation plan for at least your top 10 donors, but this could be 25 or 50 of your donors. Update it monthly. Sometimes people are going to fall off that plan. They're not going to make a gift. Sometimes they're going to make that gift and you need to add somebody else in. Assign at least one task per prospect to a volunteer or to a staff member so that multiple people are involved in that cultivation. And do at least one cultivation touch per day. Not if you only have 10 donors that you're cultivating. Across your whole donor portfolio, try to do at least one thing per day to cultivate donors. I don't mean one thing per donor. Cultivate one person per day at least. And remember, absolutely nothing has the same value as a face-to-face visit. If you can get lots of face-to-face visits, you'll get lots of gifts. That's the secret. It's as simple as that. So a few closing thoughts. Cultivation really is an apt metaphor. And when given the right attention, sunlight and water, attention from the organization, follow up in the building of trust, nothing is impossible for your resource development program. If you go to the handouts tab on your dashboard, you will see the following resources to download: PDF of your PowerPoint slides, prospect contact form and directions, prospect engaging and cultivation tracking worksheet, and from K. Sprinkle Grace, 10 great tips for cultivation. We'll stay on the line to deal with any questions that anybody might have and to deal with discussion. But if you'd like to pursue this a little bit further, by all means, please feel free to contact me. I hope that this is helpful, and I wish you all the very best of cultivating.